In a small colonial-style house in a quiet residential neighborhood outside New York, Emma Harrison was absorbed in her design work, bathed in the afternoon sunlight. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, handling everything from small local businesses to major corporate clients. Today, she was putting the finishing touches on a new logo design for a local bakery. Looking at the warm design featuring wheat motifs on her computer screen, she nodded with satisfaction. The sound of the front door opening announced her husband Michael's arrival home. The financial analyst, dressed in his usual navy suit, entered the living room with a tired expression. Emma turned around and smiled at him. "Welcome home. How was your day?" Michael loosened his tie with a slightly complicated expression. "It was okay." "Oh, Emma, I have another business trip to Texas next week. It'll be about 3 days." Emma's hands paused for a moment. She had been concerned about Michael's increasing trips to Texas lately. "Again? You've been going to Texas a lot recently. Is there some big project going on?" "That's right. The coordination with the branch office there is complicated. Many things can't move forward without meeting in person," Michael answered vaguely, then placed his hand on Emma's shoulder. "Thanks for worrying about me. But it's work, so there's no choice." Emma placed her hand over her husband's. "I understand. But please take care of your health." On the weekend, the two visited Michael's mother, Dorothy Harrison, as they always did. Dorothy cherished Emma like her own daughter. Her house was located in a small town about an hour's drive from Manhattan, a warm home surrounded by a well-maintained garden. "Emma, can you show me your new designs?" Dorothy asked with sparkling eyes while preparing dinner. She always showed interest in Emma's work and genuinely supported her. Emma happily took out her tablet and showed Dorothy her latest work. "This is branding for a new organic cafe. I focused on simple design with a nature theme." "Wonderful. Your work always has such warmth, it makes me happy just looking at it," Dorothy praised Emma from her heart. "You are my real daughter. I'm truly happy that Michael married you." Emma's cheeks flushed. "Thank you, Mom. It makes me really happy to hear you say that." After dinner, Dorothy brought out an old photo album while making coffee. "Let me show you pictures of Michael when he was little. You'd be interested, wouldn't you, Emma?" While turning the pages of the album, Dorothy shared memories of her son's childhood. However, partway through, her expression clouded slightly. "This child has always been secretive. Sometimes I couldn't understand what he was thinking." Michael's face suddenly turned sour. "That's enough about old stories." He tried to close the album. "But I should tell Emma about." "I said that's enough." Michael's voice contained unusual irritation. Emma sensed the subtle tension flowing between mother and son. Dorothy said nothing more, but her eyes held an expression as if she wanted to say something. On the way home, as Emma and Dorothy were saying goodbye at the entrance, Dorothy suddenly grasped Emma's hand. "Emma, let's talk again soon, just the two of us. Next time, we'll have a proper conversation." The trembling of that hand and the anxious color in Dorothy's eyes made Emma feel uneasy. "Of course. Please call me anytime." Michael was silent in the car. Emma gazed at her husband's profile while thinking about the evening's events. Dorothy's words lingered in her mind. 3 days later, on Tuesday afternoon, when Emma finished a phone conference with a client, her cell phone rang. Dorothy's name appeared on the screen. "Hello, Mom," Emma greeted brightly. However,
Can you imagine making $10,000 a month just from YouTube, all from home? That's exactly what I did with Reddit Stories. No face, no voice. Check the link in the description if you're curious.
Dorothy's voice on the other end was different from usual, tense. "Emma, thank you for your hard work. Is it okay to talk now?" "Of course. What's wrong?" "Actually, there's something I need to tell you tomorrow. Something very important." Dorothy's voice was trembling. "I have a favor to ask." I want to meet without Michael knowing. There's something I want to discuss with just the two of us. Emma's heart began to race. This was the first time she had heard Dorothy speak in such a serious tone. Of course. But Mom, is something terrible happening? I can't talk about it over the phone. Could you meet me at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon at our usual cafe? That little cafe in the mall. Yes, I understand. But I'm really worried. If there's anything I can do. Emma, you're such a kind girl. Wait until tomorrow. And please, don't tell Michael about our conversation today. After hanging up, Emma was enveloped in deep anxiety. The urgency in Dorothy's voice, and her request to meet without her son knowing. A premonition that something terrible was about to happen gripped Emma's chest. That evening when Michael came home, Emma tried to act normal. However, during dinner, her mind was full of thoughts about her promise with Dorothy. Michael seemed tired and spoke less than usual. I'm busy preparing for next week's Texas trip, Michael said apologetically. Sorry, I haven't been home much lately. Don't worry about it. I understand your work is demanding, Emma smiled, but behind that smile, she somehow felt something was off about her husband's words. At 1:30 the next afternoon, Emma headed to the meeting place with Dorothy. The small cafe in the usual shopping mall was relatively quiet on a weekday afternoon. Emma sat in a corner seat and waited for Dorothy. Time passed, but she didn't appear. Even at 2:15, even at 2:30, there was no sign of Dorothy. Worried, Emma called Dorothy's cell phone. However, no matter how many times it rang, no one answered. Her anxiety grew, and Emma tried calling the house landline, but there was no response there either. Around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Emma's cell phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. Emma, this is terrible. Mom collapsed. Michael's voice was confused. She's being taken to the hospital by ambulance right now. Please come to Central Hospital immediately. Emma went pale. What happened? Why did she collapse? I don't know. The neighbor found her. She was unconscious, Michael's voice was shaking. Just hurry and come. Emma rushed to her car and headed for Central Hospital. Even while driving, Dorothy's phone call from yesterday wouldn't leave her mind. That urgent voice, the way she seemed to want to convey something important. Could it be related to today's events? When she arrived at the hospital, Michael was sitting in the waiting room with his head in his hands. When Emma rushed over, he looked up. His eyes were red and he was clearly distraught. Emma, thank goodness. I got an explanation from the doctor, but Mom's condition is serious. Soon, a middle-aged male doctor in a white coat appeared. Dr. Williams, according to his name tag, explained to Michael and Emma with a grave expression. Mr. Harrison, ma'am, let me explain your mother's condition. She lost consciousness due to acute symptoms and is currently being treated in the ICU, the doctor's voice was somber. As for the cause, we're still waiting for detailed test results. However, her condition doesn't allow for optimism. What do you mean you don't know the cause? Emma asked. We're conducting blood tests and various other tests, but the sudden onset makes it time-consuming to identify the cause. It could be age-related, but we can't say for certain until we see the test results. Michael had been listening silently to the doctor's explanation, but suddenly stood up. Why is this happening so suddenly? She was fine just yesterday. Son, unfortunately these things can happen. Let's pray for your mother's recovery now. That night, Emma and Michael spent time at the hospital. Dorothy was connected to a ventilator, with only the sound of monitors breaking the silence. Emma sat in a chair, holding Dorothy's hand. Looking at her mother-in-law's face, which seemed as if she were simply sleeping, Emma couldn't help but think about yesterday's phone call. Emma, did Mom contact you yesterday about anything? Michael suddenly asked. Emma's heart jumped. Remembering that Dorothy had sworn her to secrecy, she hesitated. No, nothing in particular. I see. Mom seemed to have some kind of worry lately. But she wouldn't tell me anything. Michael shook his head wearily. Early the next morning, Dr. Williams came to the hospital room. Just from his expression, Emma could tell it was bad news. Mr. Harrison, ma'am, your mother has regained consciousness, the doctor said quietly. However, unfortunately, she may not have much time left. The time you have to speak with her is limited. Emma stood up on shaking legs. Michael also hurriedly stood up, but the doctor raised his hand to stop him. Too many people at once would be a burden. Please, one at a time, and briefly. Emma, you go first, Michael said. I'll go after I collect myself. Emma nodded and headed to the hospital room. Dorothy had her ventilator mask removed and her eyes were barely open. When Emma approached, her eyes slowly turned toward Emma. Mom, Emma called out in a tearful voice. Dorothy's lips moved slightly. She seemed to be trying to say something voiceless. Emma leaned close to the bedside and brought her ear near Dorothy's face. At that moment, Dorothy's trembling hand grasped Emma's hand. Though the grip was weak, it was definitely trying to convey something to Emma. Dorothy's eyes held an urgency, as if she had something important to communicate. Emma quietly closed the hospital room door and sat at Dorothy's bedside. In the low hum of ICU machines, a quiet moment began for just the two of them. Dorothy's face was pale, but her eyes still held a strong light of will. Mom, it's me, Emma, Emma said gently. Can you hear me? Dorothy's eyes slowly focused on Emma's face. Then, from her trembling lips, a faint voice escaped. Emma. Yes, I'm here. Emma wrapped Dorothy's hands in both of hers. Those hands were cold as ice. Listen, Dorothy's voice was barely a whisper. There's no time. Emma leaned forward. Dorothy's eyes held the same urgency as yesterday's phone call. What I wanted to tell you yesterday, Dorothy struggled to form words. About Michael. What about Michael? Tears welled up in Dorothy's eyes. My son, she took a deep breath, is lying. Emma's heart pounded violently. Lying? What kind of lie? Texas, Dorothy's voice grew fainter. Not business trips. Then what for? Dorothy coughed painfully. Emma hurriedly tried to bring water to her lips, but Dorothy shook her head. He has another family. Emma's world stopped for an instant. Another family. A wife and child, tears spilled from Dorothy's eyes. In Texas. Emma was speechless. Her mind went blank and she couldn't think of anything. Emma, listen, Dorothy's voice echoed weakly. Run away. Run away. From Michael, Dorothy's hand gripped Emma's more tightly. It's dangerous. Dangerous? What do you mean? Dorothy reached under her pillow. Her trembling fingers were searching for something. Eventually, she pulled out a small smartphone. Take this, Dorothy desperately pressed the phone into Emma's hand. Look at it. Mom's cell phone. Everything's in there. Dorothy's breathing became labored. The evidence. Emma took the smartphone. The screen was cracked and it was an old model. But don't tell him, Dorothy's voice became intermittent. Keep it absolutely secret. Mom, tell me more. What is Michael? At that moment, the hospital room door burst open. Emma reflexively hid the smartphone inside her cardigan. Mom. Michael rushed into the hospital room. His face was etched with deep worry and panic. He rushed to the bed and looked at his mother's face. Mom, it's me, Michael. The moment Dorothy saw Michael, her expression changed dramatically. The warmth disappeared, replaced by a color of fear. She shook her head slightly. Mom, are you okay? I'm here, Michael tried to take his mother's hand. However, Dorothy shrank away from that hand. Emma was surprised by her mother-in-law's reaction. Why would she show such a fearful expression toward her son? "I'm so glad Mom woke up," Michael said in a tearful voice. "I was so worried." Dorothy continued to stare at Michael. Tears quietly flowed from her eyes. However, they weren't tears of joy, but tears filled with some deep sadness and despair. "Emma," Dorothy called Emma's name in a weak voice. "Yes." Emma stood up and approached the bed. "Thank you." Dorothy took Emma's hand. "You are," she continued, breathing heavily, "my real daughter." At that moment, the light faded from Dorothy's eyes. The heart monitor showed a flat line, and alarm sounds rang out. "Mom!" Michael screamed. "Mom!" Doctors and nurses rushed into the hospital room in a panic. But it was too late. Dorothy Harrison had quietly passed away. Emma stood there in shock. The smartphone hidden inside her chest felt as if it were burning hot. Dorothy's last words echoed in her head. "Run away." From Michael. "It's dangerous." Michael was clinging to his mother's body and crying. Why now? Why so suddenly? After a while, when the doctors finished their procedures, silence returned to the hospital room. Michael sat in a chair, covering his face with both hands. Suddenly, Michael looked up and stared at Emma. In his eyes, along with sadness, some sharp light dwelled. "Emma, when you talked with Mom at the end, didn't she say anything?" Emma's heart began to race. "Nothing in particular." "Really?" Michael stood up and approached Emma. "How did Mom seem?" "She was very weak. But she was worried about you," Emma tried to answer calmly. Michael's eyes looked Emma up and down as if licking her entire body. "Wasn't she given anything? A letter, or a memo?" "Nothing," Emma shook her head. However, Michael's questioning continued. "Show me your pockets." "What?" "Mom might have been hiding something." "Emma, let me check inside your pockets and bag." Michael reached for Emma's handbag. Emma hurriedly clutched her bag. "Michael, what are you doing?" "Mom just passed away." "That's exactly why." Michael's voice became rough. "I want to know what Mom was thinking at the end." He tried to reach for Emma's cardigan pocket. Emma reflexively pulled away. "Michael, stop it." "What are you hiding, Emma?" Michael's eyes became menacing. "You got something from Mom, didn't you?" At that moment, a nurse entered the hospital room. "Family members, thank you for your patience. We need to discuss some procedures with you." Michael clicked his tongue and moved away from Emma. "We'll talk later, Emma." Emma nodded, but her mind was on something else. What was in Dorothy's smartphone? And why was Michael so desperately trying to find something? When she was alone in the hospital corridor, Emma took out the hidden smartphone. The screen was cracked, but it looked like it might turn on. Emma took a deep breath. She couldn't forget Dorothy's last words. "Run away." From Michael. Emma had no idea what was going to happen next. However, there was one thing she knew for certain. This smartphone that Dorothy had risked her life to give her surely contained important truths. Dorothy's funeral was held at the church in the small town. Many people who loved her attended and shared warm memories. Emma wore a black dress and sat quietly next to Michael. However, her heart was complicated. Dorothy's smartphone hidden deep in her chest felt like a secret burden. During the funeral, Emma observed Michael. He seemed to be grieving, but there was something unsettling about the expressions he occasionally showed. Especially when attendees spoke about memories with his mother, Emma didn't miss the subtle irritation that crossed Michael's face. "Dorothy was worried about her son until the end," one of the attendees said. "But she seemed truly relieved that you had a happy marriage." Michael nodded appropriately, but his eyes stared into space. Emma felt her chest tighten as she remembered Dorothy's last words. After the funeral ended and the attendees had left, Emma and Michael returned home. Michael seemed tired and immediately went to take a shower. Emma seized this opportunity to be alone and hurried to the bedroom. She hid Dorothy's smartphone deep in the closet and pressed the power button while trying to calm her racing heart. When the screen lit up, a password entry screen appeared. Emma remembered. Dorothy had once told her with a laugh, "The password is your birthday. It's easy to remember." With trembling fingers, she entered her own birthday, and the smartphone unlocked. Emma quickly opened the photo folder. The first thing that caught her eye was a photo of an unfamiliar woman and child. The woman appeared to be in her late 20s to early 30s with a lovely smile. Next to her stood a young boy. However, Emma gasped when she saw the third person in the photo. It was Michael. He was embracing his wife and child, smiling happily. In the background, a sign reading, "Welcome to Texas," was visible. Emma checked the photo's detailed information. The date and time of the photo was 3 months ago, during the time Michael had gone on a Texas business trip. In the next photo, Michael was giving the little boy a piggyback ride. In what appeared to be a park, the family of 3 was enjoying themselves happily. In another photo, Michael was kissing the woman. Emma's hands trembled. She couldn't tell if this was reality or a bad dream. However, the photos definitely told the truth. Michael had another family. The Texas business trips were lies. Looking further through the photos, Emma even found pictures of Michael and the woman's wedding. The woman in her wedding dress and Michael in a tuxedo were making vows at the altar. Looking at the date of the photo, it was after Emma and Michael had married. Emma felt nauseous. Her husband was a bigamist. And her mother-in-law had known about it. She quickly opened the email folder and found multiple reports from a private investigator. The subject line read, "Michael Harrison Investigation Report." Opening the latest email, detailed investigation results were recorded. Michael had been married to a woman named Jessica Miller for 2 years and had a 1-year-old son. They had established a home in the Dallas suburbs of Texas. And to maintain 2 households, he had accumulated massive debts. Scrolling further, Emma found information that made her heart freeze. The subject has taken out a $5 million life insurance policy on Emma Harrison. The beneficiary is himself. Also, he recently increased the insurance amount. Furthermore, we have confirmed that the subject has multiple internet search histories regarding his wife Emma's accidental death. Emma's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the smartphone. Michael was planning her death. For the insurance money. Frantically reading through other emails, she found notes that Dorothy herself had written. "I love my son. But I must protect Emma. Michael has lost his way. What can I do? Should I consult the police? But that would end my son's life. I don't know what to do." And in the last note, written in trembling letters. "Michael suspects me. I saw him searching my room. Maybe I'm in danger too. But I must protect Emma. She's my real daughter." Emma couldn't stop crying. She could painfully understand how much Dorothy had suffered, torn between her love for her son and her desire to protect Emma. Looking further through the emails, Emma even found an audio file of the last conversation Dorothy had with Michael. It was from the night before Dorothy collapsed. Emma hesitantly pressed the play button. "Mom, what are you investigating?" Michael's voice was filled with anger. "Michael, I'm just worried." Dorothy's voice was trembling. "Did you say something unnecessary to Emma?" "Son, you're making a mistake. Emma is a good girl. You mustn't hurt her. Don't interfere with my business. There are circumstances you don't know about. About Jessica and the child. Or about the insurance." There was silence on the other end of the phone. Then Michael's voice became low and took on a dangerous tone. "Mom, you'd better not pry too much." "Michael, are you threatening me?" "Your own mother." "It's not a threat. It's advice." The recording ended there. Emma was stunned. Michael had been threatening his mother. And the next day, Dorothy collapsed. Was this a coincidence? The shower sounds stopped. Michael would be coming out soon. Emma quickly turned off the smartphone and hid it deep in the closet. Then she sat on the bed and acted as if nothing had happened. Michael entered the bedroom wearing a bathrobe. He looked at Emma with a tired expression. "Today was difficult. But Mom will be able to rest peacefully now." Emma nodded, but she couldn't look directly at her husband's face. This person was a bigamist who had planned her death and threatened his mother. "Emma, are you okay? You look pale," Michael said with apparent concern. "I'm just a little tired," Emma tried to answer normally. Michael sat next to her and placed his hand on her shoulder. "Let's return to normal life starting tomorrow." "Oh, about next week's Texas trip, it might be postponed a bit." A chill ran down Emma's spine. The Texas business trip. That meant returning to his other wife. "I see," Emma answered briefly. "Emma, are you really okay?" A faint suspicion mixed into Michael's voice. "Are you shocked about Mom's situation?" "Mom passed away so suddenly, it still doesn't feel real." Michael stared intently at her face. In his eyes was a coldness she had never seen before. "Emma, if you heard anything from Mom, I want you to tell me." "I didn't hear anything." "Really?" Michael's hand gripped Emma's shoulder tightly. "Didn't Mom say something at the end?" Emma desperately tried to remain calm. "She just said to call Michael." Michael stared at Emma for a while, but eventually released his hand. "I see. If you're tired, let's get some rest." That night, Emma couldn't sleep at all. Listening to Michael's breathing as he slept beside her, she realized how dangerous her situation was. Tomorrow, no, she needed to take action right now. She couldn't waste the evidence that Dorothy had risked her life to give her. Emma made up her mind. When morning came, she would contact the police. She would tell them everything and have them investigate the truth about Dorothy's death too. Michael's breathing stopped for an instant. Emma held her breath. However, he fell back into deep sleep. Emma breathed a sigh of relief while staring at the ceiling. With the dawn, Emma firmed her resolve. While Michael was still sleeping, she quietly left the house and headed to the nearby police station. She clutched Dorothy's smartphone in her hand. Detective Johnson was a veteran detective who took Emma's trembling phone report seriously and listened to her story earnestly. The evidence photos saved on the smartphone, the private investigator's reports, and most decisively, the recording of Dorothy and Michael's last phone call. "This is a serious case," Detective Johnson frowned. "We'll immediately reinvestigate the cause of Dorothy Harrison's death. And we must ensure your safety as well." 2 days later, the autopsy results came in. A lethal amount of digitalis was detected in Dorothy's body. It was a component used as heart medication, but with excessive intake, it was definitely a poison that would cause death. When they examined the hospital's security cameras, they found footage of Michael sneaking into his mother's hospital room the night before Dorothy collapsed. Michael was arrested at his workplace. At first he denied everything, but when confronted with the evidence, he finally confessed. The debt from maintaining 2 households had snowballed, and Emma's life insurance money was the only solution he could think of. And when his mother learned of this plan and tried to tell Emma the truth, he poisoned her to silence her. "Mom should have loved me, so why did she interfere?" Michael reportedly muttered during interrogation. Until the end, he didn't understand the gravity of his crimes. A week later, Emma visited Texas. It was to meet Jessica Miller face to face for the first time. The 28-year-old woman, like Emma, was a victim who had been deceived by Michael. "I thought something was strange too," Jessica said while holding her 1-year-old son. "But I never imagined he had another wife." The two women shared their experiences with each other and realized how they had both been manipulated by Michael's cunning lies. However, rather than hatred, a sense of solidarity as fellow victims emerged. 3 months later, Emma left New York and moved to San Diego, California on the West Coast. She decided to make a fresh start as a freelance designer in a new environment. Using the inheritance from Dorothy as seed money, she established a women's organization called Dorothy's House to support victims of domestic violence and fraud. Through her support work, Emma met many women. All had been betrayed and hurt by someone they trusted in some way. However, they also possessed strength and courage. Emma realized that true family wasn't about blood relations, but about bonds of mutual support during difficult times. Michael received a life sentence for first-degree murder. No one visited him in prison. He faced lonely days, having lost 2 families and bearing the sin of matricide. Emma sent Michael a letter just once. "Dorothy loved you until the end." Though she suffered between her love for her son and justice, she ultimately made the right choice. "I pray that someday you will understand the depth of that love." No reply came. A year later in spring, Emma was planting white roses that her mother-in-law had loved in the garden of Dorothy's house. The warm wind blowing from the Pacific Ocean caressed her cheek, seeming to carry hope for a new life. "Thank you, Mom," Emma whispered softly. "With the courage you taught me, I can help someone else today too." The white rose bud swayed in the wind as if responding.